for 10 years, and we appreciate all the support that you've given. Tonight, we're proud to present Snaps, Sex, and Social Media. And this is the second time that Rox has been with us, so we're excited that they're back. We had a really nice morning session as well. PERC is Parents Encouraging Responsible Choices. We are the extension of the Dublin City Schools PTO, and we very much appreciate all of their support and donations that they bring so that we can bring programming to you all. Also, you are more than welcome to come to one of our meetings. We meet the third Wednesday of the month at Dublin Central Office, and as you know, they've moved to Emerald Campus, and the doors are always open for you all to attend if you'd like to. At 9:30 is when we meet. And then, when you leave today, please go online and fill out our survey. If you go to Dublin PERC, you'll find us there, and take a moment to do that, because that'll tell us how programming is. And because we start doing that throughout the year, thinking about programming. Thanks to Dublin Schools for all their support and for the videotaping today and so forth. I think we've used some of their equipment in helping to get out the information. Abbey Theater, Brian's up there. We appreciate his help and support tonight. And also thanks to ACT, Nationwide Children's Hospital, and also Centero. They come to our meetings as well, and that's been a very beneficial to our group. Mathmasia has been financial support to us, which we very much appreciate. Let's get about tonight. I want to introduce Lisa Hinkleman, is a nationally recognized research speaker and author. She works to educate, foster girls' confidence and self-esteem, and successful in decision-making. She has more than 10 years researching girls and educating adults, both as a professor at The Ohio State University and as a founder and CEO of the national nonprofit Ruling Our Experiences, which is Rox. Rox is an organization that delivers evidence-based programming, research, education, and training focused on critical issues impacting girls. Rox is here in Dublin. You can find it, it has been and is currently at different schools, Daniel Wright Elementary, Davis Middle School, Hoffman High School, Glacier Ridge, Riverside, and also over at St. Bridget too. If your school is interested in starting a program, you can do that. One way to go is through your PTOs. You can contact them and your school principal. So it might be something that you're interested in doing. So we are really thrilled that you all are here, and I think you'll enjoy the program tonight. Thanks.
Do I need to do anything with my mic? It's on? I feel so fancy with this mic, like I'm Britney Spears. Welcome! I'm so excited that you showed up today, because it's a gorgeous day, and it's 7 at night, and there's a million other things you could be doing. So I love that you actually came to learn a bit more about the work that we're doing, and a little bit about Rox. I just lost my PowerPoint. It's on here. Should I unplug and plug again? It was working great before.
Yeah. Did I touch something when I was
No,
there?
I think you did. There we go. So I run an organization called Rox. And have any of you in here ever heard of Rox before? Okay, a handful, which is wonderful. Rox actually began as my research study when I was a professor at Ohio State. And in 2006, I was teaching in the counselor education program and also working in schools and community organizations with girls as a therapist. And I was realizing there was all of these challenges that girls were facing that we weren't doing a very good job addressing. We, meaning the adults in girls' lives. That they were experiencing drops in confidence and unhealthy body image and experiencing themselves in all of these sort of negative and restricting ways. And we didn't really have one program that would address all of these things. And so what I saw was these very disparate kinds of things, like, oh, we have a self-esteem program, and over here we have a leadership program, and in this other program we talk about careers in STEM, And then over here, we talk about healthy dating. And it was sort of like, okay, why are we doing all of that separately when we should be looking at all of this together? And so I began this research study with 57 girls in Columbus City schools. And we began to pre- and post-test them after we would deliver a 10-week curriculum at that time. And was looking to see, like, what are they learning? And how are they different? And so we saw some shifts in confidence and self-esteem and leadership acquisition and safety and violence prevention skills and some of these elements that were really important. But we also saw that we needed to do more, we needed to go deeper. And so we expanded the curriculum as well as the girls that we were impacting. And each year, for 5 years, that kept happening. And so my students would graduate and become school counselors and say, like, hey, can I keep running Rox? And I'm like, yes, that's brilliant, keep doing that. And so in 5 years' time, we were in about 25 schools with a couple hundred girls. And that's the year that I left Ohio State in my full-time position to then begin to run Rox full-time. At this point, Rox is serving over 4,000 girls in 350 schools across the country. And so we're headquartered here in Columbus, but we're serving girls in California and Hawaii and Florida and New Mexico because we keep this model where we're training and licensing school counselors and social workers and educators. They come to us to get trained, and then they take this back to their home schools. And so we have this mission of creating generations of confident girls who actually are in control of their own relationships, experiences, decisions, and futures. Now, that is like a very lofty goal. Because the reality is that we don't have generations of girls. We don't have generations of grown-up women who are in charge of their own relationships, experiences, decisions, and futures. And I think for us, we've got to get to the girls and equip them with skills that they need to navigate the madness. But we also have to spend some time with the adults who are influencing, mentoring, parenting, teaching girls, because they need some skills in this space too. Because this world is really complicated and only seems to get more so. So what we do is this evidence-based programming in schools. We also do large-scale national research, much of which I'm going to share with you today. And then we do training and professional development for counselors and parents and teachers and educators and superintendents and others who are impacting girls' lives. When we bring people to our training, they learn not just the philosophy of what we're trying to do, but the why. Why is it even important that we're addressing these issues in girls' lives? What are the social conditions that are contributing to the way girls are experiencing themselves, and then the way that how they experience themselves is impacting their decisions? And so for us, we know that there's some pretty universal areas where girls are struggling, and the data tells us this. And so our interventions are based on what we actually know girls are experiencing. So I'm going to show you a quick video, and then we're going to dig down into the data a little bit more.
The world is complicated for girls. It's a difficult place for them to develop a strong sense of confidence. Confidence in their bodies, their abilities, their opinions, their opportunities. And ultimately, confidence in themselves. But what if there was an in-depth, evidence-based solution to help girls develop the skills needed to navigate these challenges? To help them learn how to stand up for themselves, handle pressure and conflict, and learn the power of no. Stop. I can. I will. This is the power of Rox.
It's playing down here really nice. Oh no, nothing happened here. I'll try to.
Experiences from this generation forward. Go to rulingourexperiences.org to learn more.
Well, you get the gist. If you really want to watch it again, you can watch it on our website. But that's the gist of what Rox is about. And here's my ideas for what I plan to talk about today. But because we're kind of a small group, we can kind of deviate from this a little bit. But for today, I'm kind of approaching our time as I'd like to share with you some of the research that we are learning about girls across the country. So the Girls Index research that we did is not from Rox girls, it's a sample of girls aged grades 5 through 12. And I want to talk about what we're learning, where there's relationships, some of the trends that we're seeing, and how we see some things universally impacting girls. I want to talk a little bit about social media and this new landscape, because since I started Rox, okay, so think back to what you were doing in 2006. Okay, that is quite some time ago. I'm sure some of the girls in here might not even have been born yet, right? So 2006, if you can remember then, social media wasn't a thing yet, right? Like Facebook was just getting started, okay? And that was actually when kids wanted to go on Facebook. Because now they're like, ew, Facebook, like my mom and my grandmother are on Facebook. Like Facebook is for us grown-ups, but I remember like working in these schools where these girls would be like in the computer lab, like logged in with like fake college accounts to get onto Facebook, and I'm like, so interesting. And I was like, well, how are you doing this? And I'm like, don't worry about it. And then of course, like it's supposed to be blocked at the school, but I was like, well, how are you going to get on here? And I thought there's like, you know, things that keep that, and they're like, please. Like, you know, they got to work around for everything, even back then. And so when I think about the biggest shift in our work, it's social media, right? It has transformed the landscape for all of us, girls included. And when we look back to the earliest lessons of Rox, there's nothing in that curriculum about social media at all. And now, there's so much infused in that because it's impacting everything. How girls feel about their bodies, how they feel about their relationships, how they judge their popularity, whether or not they're invited to the party, they know, right? It is the transformative factor, so I kind of want to lay some groundwork around that. I also want to talk about some strategies of like, what are some things that are just concrete things that we can do to shift the way that we're engaging with and communicating with girls? And what are the things that they're saying that they want and need from the adults in their lives? So that's my game plan. What are some things that if you left our time together today and got something useful, what comes to mind for you? I mean, cool, I'll just roll like I was planning.
As a parent, when your child, the text, the talking text bubbles that you had on there,
Yeah.
as a parent, how do you deal with that when it seems like your daughter's in this like downward spiral of like the world's crashing down on me, everything's terrible,
Yeah.
and you can recognize that they're being irrational, but you know that's not the right way to respond.
Definitely, yes, right.
So what is the right way?
Okay, so the question is when you're kind of seeing the reaction from a series of texts or a conversation that that your girl is kind of perceiving as the end of the world, or like this is like the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And you're kind of looking at it like, seriously, it's actually not a big deal. Or you're being irrational, which, has anyone in here ever been called irrational before? Did you like it? Like, no one's ever like, you know what, I totally am being irrational. You're usually like, ooh, you don't even know, right? Our reaction to that, right? Even though we see it with a different lens. So I will make sure that we talk a little bit about that. Anything else kind of come to mind for anyone here? Yes.
So right now, I just allow texting and FaceTime. That's it. And I'm trying to minimize social media, but I know it can be a useful tool as she gets older. But right now, so my daughter is 12, and I would like to know when is a better time to introduce it. Like I'm thinking when I feel that she solidly feels good about herself, and it's always
I'm like, when does that happen? When you're like 35? I don't know, yeah.
I guess gauge when's an appropriate
Yeah.
time to introduce
Sure.
those kinds of.
Okay, we'll talk about that too. And here's what you're not gonna get from me today. So if you have in mind that I'm gonna tell you, like, download this tracking app, check in with your kid this many times a day, and follow them everywhere they go. Like, those are not the things I'm going to be talking about. But I always get the sense that people are like, what is the best app to track my kid in fitness in? And I'm like, there's actually not a great, that's not the great approach, right? So we're gonna talk a bit about that today too. And I will, you know, spoiler alert, there's no like easy fix here. There's not a, I just check these boxes and social media is under control in my family now. This thing is driving me bananas. Okay. See, I'm actually not Britney Spears, so sorry to disappoint you. All right, so here's the deal. We know that there's stuff coming down the pipe for girls, right? You know that at certain ages, they're gonna experience certain kinds of things. I'm gonna switch to the handheld mic if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
It's just falling off my ear. Thank you. Okay. We know that there's stuff that's gonna happen for girls at some point. So when you think of like, okay, I'm pretty sure at some point my girl is gonna experience this. What kinds of things come to mind? Puberty, right? We're never like, oh my gosh, puberty, that just came completely out of the blue. I never saw it coming. Like, we know it's coming, right? For all kids who are developing in a healthy way, that's coming down the pipe, right? We know that girls are gonna have challenges in relationships with other girls. We know that as girls get older, they're gonna be asked to send a photo of themselves, an inappropriate photo of themselves. We kind of know that stuff's coming, and everyone's like, no, not my daughter and not her friends. Like, that is not a thing. Hold tight, right? Stick with me, please. The reality is these challenges are coming, and so it's our responsibility to be proactive and implement the supports that they need in advance. Instead of being like, oh, I never thought these girls were gonna be mean to you. Let's figure out how to fix this. Oh, I never thought you were gonna get dumped. I never thought you were gonna have this. I never thought, well, we have to know that we can't insulate our kids from all the things, right? It's not like, ooh, not my kid. And so when we think about what are the skills that girls need to navigate the hardest things that they're gonna face, that's what we get the chance to do. And I always think about how hard and complicated communication gets between teens and their parents when their lives actually get the most complicated for them. Right? You have this time where like everyone's close and like little girls think that their parents are the smartest, most brilliant, funny things that they've ever met, right? And they just adore them. And then there comes an age where they're like, overnight, you hate each other, right? And you're like, who is this child, right? She was so nice yesterday, and now she's embarrassed to be seen with me, right? And they're pushing away. And you're like, want to kiss them goodbye, and you're like, ew, quit, right? Or you pull up to pick them up, and they actually want to create more distance. That's normal, right? That's normal adolescent stuff of like trying to figure out my own identity, and I still need you very much, but I'm trying to learn how to be independent. But when we think about the hardest stuff that girls are gonna face, we want them to experience with us. We want to be the people that are part of their lives that help them through the hardest challenges, right? When you think about your girl having a breakup, right? Whether it's with friends, right? Because those breakups hurt really bad too. Or if it's with a dating partner, those breakups hurt. Wouldn't you want her to experience that with you, to bolster her, to support her, to help her through that, surrounded by people that care for her and love her? So that when that happens, again, later, when she's in college maybe, she's got the skills to manage it. But what we find so often is that during the teen years, the girls pull away, and boys do too, but they pull away because they don't think that you get it, right? And they don't think that you understand. And they feel like often, it's easier for me to just handle this by myself than to involve all that. It's easier for me to just handle these girls bullying me on the bus than it is for me to tell my mom, and then my mom's gonna go call the bus driver, show up on the bus tomorrow, and be like, you're bullying my daughter, right? And then we'll call her parent, we'll call the principal, and that girl is like mortified, like, I just should have kept my mouth shut. And so then she learns what she can share and what she can't based on the reaction that she's likely to get. And it often exacerbates the distance that we begin to feel because it's easier for her to manage it, her emotions, than it is for her to manage her emotions and your emotions. Right? We have to shift that because that's when girls start to isolate and that's when they're dealing with tough things on their own. That's when they don't have that supportive adult who's right by their side helping them navigate it because they're afraid. And often what we do is we come at it from this place of, I know how you feel. I'm not going to ask you to show your hands, but think, how many times have you told somebody that, I know how you feel? And we think it comes from a place of care, right? Oh, I get it. I understand. I know how that feels. And I always say, like, don't ever tell anyone that you know how they feel. You know how you feel. You might have been in a similar situation, and you know how you felt in that situation, but you don't know how she feels in this exact situation. You might know how it feels to have your parents get divorced when you're in 5th grade. You might know how it feels to lose your grandma in middle school. You might know how it feels to get stood up for a really important dance. You know how that felt for you, but you don't know how that feels for her. And so instead of trying to convince her that we get it, oh, I totally get it, I totally understand, I went through the same thing. She's thinking like, oh my God, you're old and you never experienced exactly what I'm experiencing. And so sometimes we try to work really hard to convince her instead of saying like, man, you know what, when I went through that, it sucked. How's that for you? She's the expert on her own life, right? Girls are the experts on their own lives. You're the expert on your own life. Who's the expert on my life? It's me. And yet we do something different with kids is that we decide that because we were their age once, we know how they feel. And we don't. And this was actually, when I was researching my book, I did a lot of focus groups with girls and with parents. And the last question I would ask the girls is like, how can the adults in your life better support you? And they would have all kinds of ideas. And a lot about listening to me, don't jump into conclusions, and sometimes I just want to talk. I don't want you to solve the problem, I just want you to hear me. But over and over again, we would hear, like, quit telling me I was your age once and I know how it feels. And then I would ask the parents, like, well, what do you do to connect with the girl in your life? How do you show her that you're supporting her? And over again, the parents would say, well, I tell her that I was her age once and I know how she feels. And I'm like, aha, we have identified an area where we're all thinking that we're doing the right thing, but they're not receiving it in the way that we intend. So instead of convincing them, ask them. Instead of someone's telling you, I know how you feel, wouldn't it be nice if you were like, tell me what's happening for you? How does that feel for you? I get to put that feeling in my own words, based on my own experience, based on this really hard thing that I'm dealing with right now. And to the earlier question, those are really hard things. So when we think about what girls are dealing with, we look at their problems with insignificance. Right? We're like, oh my God, you're gonna meet like a nicer person in college. Like, get over this breakup. That person's a jerk anyways.
or like it's not the end of the world that this happened. And we minimize what they're feeling because you know what? We know that it's going to get harder. We know that they're going to have some harder stuff down the line. So while they're over here mad that they didn't get invited to the party, we're thinking like, wait until you have a mortgage and children and health insurance to worry about, right? Wait till the stuff gets really hard. And they're thinking like, this is actually, in my young life, the hardest thing that I've ever dealt with yet. They don't know that, but their emotions are real. And so when we approach it from that space of not a big deal, they feel that. They feel minimized in that space, right? And it doesn't encourage them to keep chatting with us. It encourages them to pull back. And so we take this approach in our work that girls are the experts on their own lives and that we want them to invite us in to develop some new insights. And so we deployed a survey across the country where we asked girls questions about all of these topics, the things that people aren't really asking girls. We wanted to hear how much time are they spending on social media and what in the world is happening? And what is that connected to for them as far as their relationships and their affinity towards school and how they think about themselves and their own abilities. And so we did this, we put out this report called the Girls Index. I think many of you probably got a little overview of it. But I'll give you a link where you can go to our website and pull the entire report down. And then we released 2 other reports after we did the Girls Index that were secondary data analyses that looked at girls who play sports and girls who don't. And we released that when with the NCAA, when the Final Four was here a couple years ago, the Women's Final Four. And then in conjunction with Battelle, we did a report on girls' STEM and careers. And so for us, we're looking to have a deep understanding of the reality of girls' life. So I'm going to show you a quick video of some of the things we're learning.
At Rox, we wanted to gain a deeper understanding of the challenges girls face every day. Not just in one region, one community, or one type of school, but everywhere. That's why we developed the Girls Index, the first ever largest of its kind national survey designed to provide new insights into the complex world of today's girls. We surveyed over 10,000 girls from across the country and asked them about the issues impacting their lives. Here's what we learned. Confidence declines sharply from 5th to 9th grade and doesn't return to pre-middle school levels. By the time girls get to high school, 46% don't believe they're smart enough for their dream career. 1 in 3 stay away from leadership positions because they don't want to appear bossy. And 1 in 2 don't speak their mind or disagree with others because they want to be liked. Even among the highest achieving girls, confidence is an issue. 30% with a 4.0 grade point average don't think they're smart enough for their dream job. The Girls Index showed us that we are not dealing with a lack of confidence, rather a crisis of confidence. This research has also helped us understand the role of technology and social media in girls' relationships, aspirations, and well-being. We learned that most high school girls spend 6 hours each day using social media, and those who spend the most time online are 5 times more likely to say they are sad or depressed nearly every day. Girls who spend the most time engaged with technology and social media are less likely to have supportive friendships, participate in extracurricular activities, trust other girls, and enjoy coming to school. But by building confident girls who have effective friendships, we can combat many of these challenges. Over and over, as we asked girls what they needed to be successful, their #1 response was confidence. Because confident girls are more likely to share their opinions. Confident girls put trust in themselves and each other. Confident girls grow up to be the brave leaders of tomorrow. Together, we can turn this crisis of confidence into the opportunity of a generation. To learn more about the groundbreaking research in the Girls Index and about Rox, go to www.rulingourexperiences.org.
So what jumped out to you of this statistics? 6 hours a day on social media. How many were kind of that jumped out to them too? 6 hours a day on social media. How many felt like that was high? How about that was low?
Yeah. So here's the deal. When we take that data back to girls, they say it feels high, but it's right. And actually, some will say that it's low. So I had a dad recently, after a talk, come up to me and he was like, Dr. Hinkman, I'd like to talk to you about your data. And Grace was just like, oh man, like what? And he was like, I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old daughter. That's 6 hours, that's low. And I was like, oh snap, right? Like he's in it, like he is in it right now. So 6 hours a day on social media, that's a lot of the day, right? That is a lot of time. What else jumped out to you? The confidence drop, right? So when you watch that 5th to 9th grade confidence drop, and then it doesn't come back up, that's frustrating.
Does it not come back ever?
Well, so here's what I just saw. Our research goes to 12th grade. So I'm going to throw this back, and I'll tell you what I just recently, I just saw a recent study. I think like, okay, does your confidence get better in college? Like, or is that when you like start to really get it? Or like maybe it's your first job. Is that where you're like, ooh, I'm feeling so confident now? Or after you have your first baby, and it's like, ooh, I like my body so much more than I did before, right? You know, I'm like, when does this rebound? And what a recent study that just came out that Harvard looked at was that women didn't rate their confidence higher until their mid-40s. So I'm like, okay, if we are at our best in 5th grade until our mid-40s, we're kind of screwed, right? Like we've got to think about how we do something different and intervene in a space so that we're helping girls not lose that confidence, and those who already are, how we help them build it back up, right? That's critical. What's that? How to do that? Well, maybe a little. That's a whole other talk. Yeah. I actually have a talk called The Confidence Crisis, and it's in that space, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Anything else of that data kind of jump out to you? Yeah.
I forget the number, but the percentage of girls that had a 4.0 and still didn't think they were smart. The percentage of girls that had a 4.0 and still didn't think they were smart enough.
Yeah. So that was 30%. 30% of girls with a 4.0 GPA or higher don't think they're smart enough for their dream job. And that was an interesting data point to pull out. That group of girls was also, 4.0s or higher, was also the least likely to say that they would speak their mind or disagree with others because they want to be liked. Those highest achieving girls, those are little pressure cooker girls, right? They're the ones that have to be perfect at everything. Perfect grades, perfect at their sport, perfect at their instrument, perfect at their extracurriculars, perfect body, perfect clothes, perfect. And they're never the girls that were like, ooh, I think we should find all the girls with 4.0s and put them in a program to help them develop more confidence. We never do that because we assume that academic outcomes equate to internalized confidence, and it doesn't. And so what we're finding is that this group of girls tend to be very overlooked when it comes to the development of other social competencies because they got it all together. I was with a group of girls recently who were 4th and 5th graders. And like my first question anytime I'm with a group of girls is like, tell me about the big things going on in girls' age. And it just gets them talking, right? And they talked about all the things you would think. They talked about popularity and boys and dating, and they talked about pressure. And this one little girl said, "There's so much pressure." And I was like, "Tell me about pressure." And she said, "Well, I am a swimmer, and so I have to swim really, really good, and I have to get really, really good grades because I have to get into a great college." And I'm like, "Girl, you are 9 years old." That's what I'm thinking. I don't say that. because she's really experiencing that pressure at 9 years old that she has to get into a really great college. And so how that is impacting and influencing her life from that young age, whoa. And then we wonder when she's in middle school and high school and has an anxiety disorder and an eating disorder and is so stressed out that she can't sleep because she got an A-. We see the cultivation of that high pressure environment play itself out in really negative ways. And I'm not advocating for like low academic achievement, but personal and social and interpersonal competencies have to be taught right alongside academic competencies. I would rather have a girl who can speak her mind, chart her own path, be comfortable in her own body, and have a 3.5 than a girl who has a 4.8, can't look anybody in the eye, can't tell you that she doesn't want to go here for lunch, is consistently manipulated by her friends, and only does things to please others, right? There's a lot to be said for these social and emotional competencies that we need to teach girls. Oh, this is the site where you can pull down all the research that I'm talking about. So here's what we know, is that girls today are facing way different challenges than any of us did, even if we think that we're kind of close in age. So how many of you have little girls, like not in school yet? Okay, how about elementary school age girls? Middle school? High school? Okay. So how many of you have seen something that looks similar to this when their girls are like hanging out with each other, or I want to invite a friend over, or we're playing? It looks like that. Like, this is super fun, right? I mean, this is the reality, right? If you have a bunch of any humans together anymore, this is what you see them doing, right? They're not talking to each other or looking at each other too much. They're really invested in that device that's in front of them. And it's really shifted the way that we build and sustain relationships, and it's shifted the way that we communicate with each other, right? So let me ask this, speaking of communication. How many of you grew up with something that looked similar to this? Right? This was the exact model that my family had, like to the color. I was like Googling, can I find that like ugly yellow telephone, right? And this phone, for the youngest people in the room, this is a telephone. And it has this cord on the bottom that is curly. And the cord, if you're very savvy, can stretch very long, all the way into the other room. Because you want to go into the other room so your parents can't hear what you're talking about in the kitchen, right? And you know, like at any time, even though you have this perceived sense of privacy, someone can pick up the phone and be like, please get off the phone. Like, don't say anything, I think someone picked up, hold on. Did you hear a click? I heard a click. Don't say anything, right? But at any time, conversation's over, someone can hang that phone up, it's done, someone's listening, right? That was privacy. And then we got like much more sophisticated with this device, which has an antenna and a battery life of about like 15 minutes, right? And so at least you could take that phone into another room and be hands-free, cord-free. It was miraculous. And it would be like really staticky all the time, right? But it allowed for a different level of independence, right? Then we got some other cool devices, like these, and then this fancy one. I want you to think back to your first cell phone, to the adults in the room. Could have been this one, or maybe it was this gem. This was similar to mine, and it had an antenna that you could like pull up and push back down, which was very, very nice. And then, if you really were cool, you got one of these. And this is a pager, young people. And this would make you feel like either like you had a lot of friends or a drug dealer, right? And so like somewhere in there, you're like, I remember like my first counseling job, I got a pager and I was like, gosh, I'm important. And really, it was like the worst possible thing ever, right? But so we all grew up with something along these lines, right? Did anyone in here grow up with a smartphone in middle school? Okay. How many of you have a smartphone now? I'm pretty sure that was everybody in the room. How many of you have it with you? How many of you, if you left it on your kitchen counter before you left to come here and you were like down the street, and you go right back to get that phone? Because like you couldn't miss anything. Today could be the day you got a flat tire or you missed a really important text from somebody or something, right? We didn't grow up with it, but we are so connected to it. We're the immigrants, right? We're the ones who remember that time before. Gosh, I remember when people used to talk to each other. Wasn't that so nice? And we say that to kids, like, quit texting them and call them. Or why don't you have a conversation? And they're like, I am having a conversation. We grew up with something different than they did. But we expect them to like harken back to the days of old when we would just sit around and play board games and talk to each other. And they're thinking like, there's nothing in my schema that you're making no sense, right? You're making no sense. And because they're the digital natives, right? We give them iPads when they're 18 months old so we can actually have dinner and talk to each other, right? And they start to learn technology. And they become very savvy with that very, very early. So it's not like they have a pre-technology and then a post. It's all the same space. So when we try to reason with them based on our experience, and we try to help them cultivate relationships based on the ways that we cultivated relationships, and we try to teach them to communicate the way that we learned how to communicate, we're missing the mark. Because their realities are so very different than ours. And so we have to kind of take that step back and understand that this communication, it's different, but it's not illegitimate. My connection with my friend or the person that I'm chatting, even though it's texting or it's Snapchatting, doesn't make it unimportant. It just makes it different than how we did it. And like, some of it is incredulous. Like we're like, I was working at a school in Florida 2 years ago after a big hurricane came through, similar to what we just recently experienced. And they were out of power for like 2 weeks. And the principal was telling me, like, I watched these girls unravel. They were trying to like charge their phones in people's cars, right? Because they weren't connected to their devices. And that like their Snapchat streaks would end. Now that's a very hard thing for me to say. Snapchat streaks. Do you know what a Snapchat streak is? Some are saying yes, some are saying no. I'm going to explain it as I understand it. Girls, you can correct me. You and I are Snapchat pals. And each day we snap each other, which means I take a picture of something. Truly anything. Could be this floor. And I snap it to you. You have to snap back to me something equally as the same, right? It could be something cool, but it could be a picture of your big toe, and you send that back to me. That's one day. And then we do that again the next day. And the next day, and the next day, until we're at like 475-day streak. And when my family says, oh my gosh, we are going to Cancun for spring break. And the girl goes, no, do they have Wi-Fi there? And you're like, what is wrong with you? Right? We're going on a cruise to the Bahamas. And they're like, no, we're buying the Wi-Fi plan. Because that streak matters. And if I don't get that going, if I'm the one who misses it's over, we have to go back to 0. And we're like, this sounds like the most insane thing I've ever heard, right? So I'm sure some of you are thinking like, this sounds bananas. But for girls, it's a thing that's real. I have seen girls completely lose their stuff, tearful at the fact that the streak could end. And they're not like fake tears, they were legit tears. And so as we try to unravel that, it's a very interesting conversation, right? Because there's just the elements of it of like, we're keeping this streak going, and then sometimes like, if I'm going on vacation, I would give you my account so that you can snap for me, so that like the streak doesn't end, and when I get back, I'll take over my account again. But girls also talk about the fact that like, it's somebody else who's thinking about them every day. That's kind of neat, right? That there's this other person that they're that connected to, that matters to them. That's kind of interesting. But we rarely look at like, what could possibly be the positives in this? We look at it and say like, this makes no sense to me, so it must be stupid. And so I encourage us to kind of pause and think about our reactions to things that we don't understand. Because what we're seeing is the disconnect getting larger. So let's see what you all know. I imagine that you'll do quite well at this little quiz. You know this one?
Instagram.
What is it? Monkey, yes. And do you want to say what monkey is, or do you want me to?
I don't have it, but one of my friends did. It's basically, it's like FaceTime, but you get to choose your group of Facebook together. So you get to choose who you want to FaceTime with, like their age group and like gender, and basically it's just a random FaceTime with anyone.
Yeah, so like if I'm a monkey and I say like, I want to chat with 18 to 24-year-old men, then it randomly is like a little Russian roulette. Someone pops up who can be doing anything. Anything, right? Because they know that they're in the monkey queue. So that video can pop up to anything. So you can imagine, right? And then you can extend the call or flip to the next one, right? And so what we see with this app is it seems to have like regional interest. Like either like all the kids in an area are using it or like none of them are. But you can imagine how wildly insane some of the things, and if you Google this, you will see a bunch of disturbing YouTube videos of people that are using money. How about this one? TikTok. This is like the old Musical.ly. And then, I know this is old, but I think it's like so good. Like, I feel like my Bitmoji is so good. And actually this morning, I had that outfit on and my hair was just like that. When I changed, we all did that. So, I'm not gonna ask you, but I want you to think about if you have ever said things like this when it connects to social media. This is such a waste of time. Why do you care about that so much? Who cares what those girls say online? Just put your phone away and forget about it. I would imagine most of us, at one point or another, have had similar kinds of reactions. And what that says to our girls is that you don't get my life right now. You don't understand that this stuff actually matters. And when you say stuff like this, it doesn't make me want to talk to you about it. It makes me want to go talk to my friends because at least they get me. And so I think there's a role for us in understanding, even if we don't completely get it, and even if we don't use it. So I don't care if you're, how many of you are on some kind of social media? Some people are, since we're like, ooh, I hate that. No. I don't care if you are or not. But it's important that you understand it. That you know what the kinds of things are that are interesting to your girl. Right? And so when you're like, are you on that Snapchat again, or on that Facebook? You know, it's like, well, yeah, yes, right? And you disconnect. And you remember when Mark Zuckerberg testified before Congress about the internet? I'm going to show you a quick clip because this is an example of what you don't want to sound like these senators.
Well, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
Senator, we run ads.
If I'm emailing within WhatsApp, does that ever inform your advertisers?
No, we don't see any of the content in WhatsApp. It's fully encrypted.
Right, but is there some algorithm that spits out some information to your ad platform? And then, let's say I'm emailing about Black Panther within WhatsApp. Do I get a Black Panther banner ad?
Senator, we don't. Facebook systems do not see the content of messages being transferred over WhatsApp.
Yeah, I know, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about whether these systems talk to each other without human being touching it.
Senator, I think the answer to your specific question is if you message someone about Black Panther on WhatsApp, it would not inform any ads.
Okay.
There have been reports that Facebook can track.
So you can see, right? Like, he's like, this is how girls feel when they're explaining things to us, right? When you're like, hey, can you show me how to, and they're like, oh, give me your phone. And they just take it and they're like exasperated. Because they want us to get it, they want us to understand, they want us to be relevant. Because the reality is their lives are so technologically advanced that by the time that they're in high school, they're spending, for many, 4 up to 8 hours, not just on social media, but engaged with technology. And what we hear girls say is that if they're not active, then they're invisible. That some of them don't even want to be as active as they are, but if they're not posting regularly, you kind of forget about them, right? It's like you're not even in the room. And so being active means like, I'm still top of mind for you. Even if it seems completely mundane. And then we also hear them talk about the importance of likes. Like, that it actually matters. And when we dig down deeper into that, what are likes? Approval, right? Who doesn't like approval? We all like and seek approval in all kinds of spaces. But when we think about what, and it's not just girls that do this, grown-up students too. Right? We curate a life, we curate photos, we curate an image that we want people to think about when they see that, right? We don't post all the bad stuff, post the really good stuff, usually. And so we hear girls talk about how much time they will invest, for some, into the right photo. Like, to the creation of the right photo at the right angle at the right time of day, right, with the right lighting. Actually, there was an article in the New York Times, maybe about 6 weeks ago now, about a young couple, like in their late 20s or early 30s, who were on their honeymoon. And the honeymoon destination was selected for its Instagrammability. From the hotel that they stayed at, to all of the excursions and everything they had to do, and that, like, it was like, okay, it's Tuesday, and we have to go to this beach for this sunset so that you could take my picture, like, with my hair going like this, right? And it was nearly the undoing of their relationship, right? And it was just this fascinating article about kind of this internet or social media addiction and the need to present a certain kind of life that we want people to give us likes for, but also be envious of, right? Is that if, like, my honeymoon is not as Pinteresty as yours, like, what does that mean? But so when we talk to girls, they talk about the investment of time into getting the right photo. And I had a girl recently tell me about, she was in 10th grade, she said, I would take like 100 selfies a day just to get the right one. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot of pictures, right? And she talked about, like, how to get the right picture. And so when you think about how to get the right picture, there's some tricks that we know, right? So have you ever opened your phone when it's right here and the camera's on? You're like, oh my God, like, who is that? Shut it off, right? This is not the angle that we tend to take photos at. What is? Not even here, right here, right? So we put the phone here so we look different and younger and thinner, and we do like weird things to our body to get like these perfect angles. Like no one's ever like, take my picture, let me see how much room I can take up. We're always like, let me see how small I can make myself, and like stand in a weird contorted way so I look like a version of myself that's actually not accurate. So she was telling me about taking these pictures, and then that, you know, you crop them and you add the nice filters that make your pores go away and do all of that. And then you wait to post it. Because there's actually a right time of day to post. If you did not know this, now you do. For this particular group of girls, it was like 8 to 9 p.m. And I'm like, what is happening? And they're like, well, everyone's on. I'm like, everyone's on. Like, yeah, everyone's on at that point. So your picture doesn't just get lost in the feed. Because God forbid you put that much effort in and it just gets lost in the feed, then you don't have the opportunity to get the likes. Right? And the likes matter. And it's the frequency of likes, right? How quickly they come and who they come from. Right? Is it a low quality like my mom? Is it a high quality like my crush, right? Because we'll look to see who the likes came from, and that matters. And I don't think that this stops when we're girls. This same stuff we see persist in grown-up girls and grown-up boys too. This idea that what I put out there is my value, and that the response I get from you increases or decreases that. And then the decision that I make next will be based on the feedback that I got from you. So let's think about the kind of photos that get a lot of play. Well, we know that like words are inconsequential, right? You can write the most prolific posting, and if it doesn't have a photo associated with it, forget it, right? So photos get more action than words. Videos get more than that. And if you think about, let's say that we've got a girl who just happened to go on one of these Cancun vacations, and her mom takes a picture of her in her bikini on the beach. And she posts that. And she gets lots of likes, lots of comments, lots of all the stuff, right? And then that girl is also a super smart girl, comes back from vacation, and she wins the school chess tournament. And she posts a picture of her trophy. Does she get the same play that she got for that bikini shot? No. The answer is no. And so when I'm so driven by the likes, the feedback, the approval, what I get from others will decide what I post next, what I highlight about myself, right? What I elevate. Because the feedback that we get from others helps define our sense of self. When we think about that space of confidence in girls' lives and in our lives, how we make sense of the world and how the world reacts to us settles right here in our gut. The messages that we get are often telling us we're not okay, right? We're not skinny enough, we are not smart enough, we're too smart, we're too loud, we're too something, right? We're all too something. And the consistent message is like, I'm not enough in this space. And so our confidence declines, and when confidence declines, it impacts our decision making. We know that girls with higher confidence make better decisions. We know that humans with higher confidence make better decisions. But we also know that girls' confidence tends to get compromised early and then not rebound. And so when we think about a more confident girl or a less confident girl, and the decisions that she's making during these critical middle school years, it matters. Because in 8th grade, that girl is asked to make her 4-year course plan. A girl with low confidence is going to be like, put me in those general classes or whatever. That level of confidence impacts whether or not I stay in unhealthy relationships or friendships. Girls with lower confidence hang out in unhealthy relationships longer than girls with higher confidence because they're afraid they won't have other friends. They're afraid that they'll be alone. Girls with lower self-confidence have lower leadership aspirations. They're less likely to even want to try. And so when we think about how we're best equipping our girls to navigate the world, we have to first look at that internal sense of self, where they're struggling profoundly, and how we bolster and build that up in a world that's consistently telling them that they're not enough. Okay. When we look at how technology is impacting girls' relationships, the more time that they spend, the less likely they are to say that they have adults or friends that they can talk to about serious issues. Similarly, we see that the more time that girls are spending on social media, the more likely they are to say that they don't trust other girls. So there's something about the kind of stuff that girls are consuming that is impacting their relationships, whether it be with adults or with other girls, right? They're isolating more. When you saw that stat that the girls who spend the most time on social media, right, that was 8 or more hours a day, that they were 5 times more likely to say they were sad and depressed nearly every day. So that was 8 or more hours a day was correlated with girls saying that they were sad or depressed 6 or 7 days a week. Now, what I have to be clear on is that that is not a causal relationship, it's a correlational relationship. Meaning, are the girls already experiencing sadness and depression, and so they're using technology and social media? Or are they using technology and social media, and it is causing them to develop more sadness and depression? It's very hard to say, and our research can't say this causes this, but we can say there's a strong relationship that we have to pay attention to. And so when we think about what girls are doing is that they have this tendency to isolate. And so if there's something that's happening for them on social media, who's she going to talk to? This is where I'm challenging you, because lots of girls don't have the adult that they can talk to about this hard stuff. And they fend for themselves because they don't think that you get it, and they don't think that you understand. And so when we think about the opportunities that we have to provide in the relationship, is that we want to be the person, right? I don't have to be like the coolest mom on the block, right? But I at least have to try to make these important connections. We see that technology also impacts girls' perceptions of themselves. They're less likely to want to come to school, less likely to describe themselves as confident, and more likely to want to change their appearance. They're also less likely to consider a STEM career and more likely to think girls are embarrassed to be smart. Because what kinds of things are they taking in? When you think about your girls and what they're following on social media, what are some of the things that you've seen? Makeup tutorials, like very extensive work on how to craft the perfect eyebrow, right? That's a thing. What else? Makeup tutorials, hair tutorials, crafts, fashion, celebrities, YouTube stars, musician, puppies? Okay. That's a check in the positive category, right? Anything else trying to come to mind? Fitness, yeah. There's a lot of Instagram fitness models, there's a lot of CrossFit stuff, right? And so when you think about this consistent feed that's coming in, that is shaping how you feel, let's talk about your social media feed. Probably maybe less makeup tutorials and more family, but probably still a lot of the other things that I would harness a guess that if you spent 30 minutes scrolling social media, you are less likely to say like, oh my God, I am so much more fit than everybody else. Like, I don't
work out anymore. Right? You look at that and you're like, ooh, geez, like, look at this. And we say like, oh my gosh, look at their family. It looks so much nicer than mine. Or their partner sending them flowers at work. I haven't gotten flowers since, you know. We judge based on what we see, and actually there's some research that looked at men and women and magazines, right? Back in the day, it was like a magazine. And so if I had you all rate how you feel about your body, and then I gave, the women, I'd give you a fashion magazine, men, I'd give you a fitness magazine, give you 20 minutes to peruse that. Take those magazines back and I give you that assessment again. What happens to how you feel about your body? It goes right down. It goes right down. And that's 20 minutes time on a magazine. So what is that doing for us as we're taking in all of these other images and we're paying attention to ourselves compared to them? This constant comparison makes us feel like everyone's life's better than mine, everyone's having more fun than me, everyone's more adventurous, everyone makes more money, everyone has better vacations. And it leaves us in the space of either feeling left out or sometimes being intentionally left out. And so one of the things we like to do is have girls critically analyze the media. Have the conversations about what they're seeing that's real and not. Because a lot of what they're seeing isn't even real. And this is an older video, but it's one that I like. So we get this experience of comparing ourselves to things that aren't even real, right? Like that woman was not even real anymore. She was so photoshopped and computer generated, and yet that's what we see and we're like, oh my gosh, my neck needs to be longer, right? That's really not something you can change very easily. And so one of the things that I encourage is like how we help her critically analyze the media and go through her feed and say, like, is what she's seeing real, or has that been photoshopped? Has that been edited? And when she looks at this, like, each thing, does it make her feel better or worse about her body and her abilities and her family and her friends and her relationships? The reality is that it's going to be hard for us to say, you need to unfollow all that stuff. That's probably pretty unlikely. But I think what we need to do is figure out how to disrupt it. Is how, instead of all the negative stuff, that there's some positive stuff thrown in there to disrupt the feed. Positive stuff that helps them think about their bodies or their abilities or women or girls differently. Stories that help them see bravery and courage and assertiveness and confidence in girls. Where they see like strong athletes doing cool stuff. Where they're challenged by stories of women who have overcome odds or who are trailblazing in a way that disrupts the makeup tutorial. And so I think we have to shift from like social media is the devil and the worst thing that has ever been invented to there's actually some positives that we can get from this. If we shift that narrative and create a different relationship, we actually have a chance to join with them. Now, these little sites I put on here are not likely sites that your girls are going to want to follow. I give these to you for you. Because if you went home and said, hey, I went to this talk today and I heard about this site called Career Girls. I think you'd really like it. She'll be like, go away, right? But if you start following some of this stuff, you're going to see these cool stories, right? And
what you might be able to do is pull one of those cool stories and say like, hey, did you see that new story that just happened about that all-female astronaut team that had their spacewalk canceled because no one thought to order them spacesuits that fit? That's real. That actually just happened. Wow, that's a cool conversation starter. What would she think about that? Let's dialogue about that and pique her interest in astronomy, in science, in technology, in space, right? All of these spaces give us chances to understand that world more so that we can insert some of the positive stuff. When we look at girls and social media, the other thing that we're seeing is distraction in school, getting into arguments at school, and I mentioned earlier about deleting posts if they don't get enough likes, but we're also seeing much more cyberbullying that girls are experiencing. I would venture that this stat is low. I would say it's probably higher than 1 in 3 girls. There's been some recent research that just came out in August. It's not my research, but a report that looked at how social media use impacts boys and girls differently. And what it found is that there is a disparate impact on girls that's different and worse. And that, that increased social media use is associated with lower life satisfaction and lower levels of happiness and increased anxiety. And it also showed that girls are experiencing more cyberbullying than boys are, and that for girls, their social media use is impacting their sleep and their physical activity more than boys. So this matters, right? And the answer is not just embedded in a let's restrict all social media use. The answer has to be looked at a bit deeper as how do I help her navigate the skills? How do I give her the skills to navigate this stuff? And when I think about the stuff like cyberbullying, that's pervasive. Bullying is pervasive among girls to begin with. They use their relationships to be mean to each other in a different way than boys do. And we see it from the smallest girls who say you can't sit with us at lunch, to the grown-up girls who are fighting with each other for the single red rose on a reality show, right? There's this competition that can start and persist among girls unless it's interrupted. And it often becomes, well, that's just how girls are. Girls are just mean to each other, women are just mean to each other, and I don't buy that for a second. That is taught and learned behavior that can also be unlearned. And so when we say, like, oh, cyberbullying, that's just girls being girls. No, it's not. That's girls learning strategies, right? That's girls who are increasing their hostility towards other girls. And that's girls who haven't developed the skills to deal with conflict. Drama. That's the word I hear all the time. Girls are so much drama. The number one thing that when we did our research, we asked girls what are the big things going on for girls your age. The number one word that was reported in that survey was drama. And when we think about what drama actually is, it's an inability to manage conflict. It's a lack of skills, not a lack of character. And so when we see this kind of cyberbullying play itself out, who is a girl to talk to if she's experiencing that? Who's the adult that she would be able to go to if this was something that was her reality? If you've been the person who said, I don't even know why you talk to those girls anyway. Why are you spending so much time on that phone? I told you just put it down. It's unlikely to be you. So when I think about how we deconstruct and restart that relationship so that we can be that person, it requires some careful attention. I'm going to freak you out with this next slide, but you'll be fine. So we also wanted to understand this area of pressure, right? And particularly around sexting. And so we asked girls about sexually explicit texts and photos, and specifically their agreement with most students send sexually explicit texts and photos to each other, and I've been asked. We did not ask girls if they had sent a photo. That was outside the bounds of what we were asking, because that's a whole other reporting and issues. And so what we found was that by the time girls are in high school, the majority will say that most students their age send sexually explicit texts and photos to each other, and that 2 out of 3 will say that they've been asked.
When we take this data back to girls, what do you think they say? It's low. Yep, they say it's low. And we have this tendency to be like, not my girl. That is all those trashy girls, but that is not my girl. And the reality is that the girls are saying, it's all of us. We're all being asked. Sometimes we're getting unsolicited photos on our phone, right? We know that the more time they're spending on social media also increases their likelihood of being asked to send a photo. And so, this is my question. When you think about what skills a girl needs to not have sex with someone she doesn't want to have sex with, what are the skills that she needs?
Ability to say no.
She needs an ability to say no. What else? She needs confidence. She needs a boundary. She needs to know, like, I'm cool with this, and then this is not, I'm not cool with this anymore. She needs to be able to articulate that boundary and know that she has a right to do that. She has to be able to deal with pressure and coercion. When the other person might say, oh, relax. I think you're so beautiful. I won't tell anybody. Just chill. No one's going to know about this. She needs to know who to talk to if something like this happens and she finds herself in this situation. There's another research study that just came out last week that looked at girls' first sexual experiences and found that the majority have been pressured into their first sexual experience and how that impacted them in later life. There's a lot of pressure girls are experiencing. Okay, so there's a whole variety of skills in that space, right? What she needs to be able to stand up for herself in that way and not do something she doesn't want to do. What are the skills that a girl needs to not send a nude photo of herself? Here's what we all know. Self-respect. Right? That's what we say. And that's what we tell girls too. If you respect yourself, you would never do that. What are the skills that she needs though? Exact same ones. Exact same ones. A boundary. The ability to enforce that boundary. The words to communicate. How to deal with pressure and coercion. How to engage an adult. Right? But you know what? We don't have a generation of girls that we're teaching how to stand up for themselves in all those ways, but we expect them to do it when it comes to social media. And so my question to you is, how does your girl stand up for herself? In the easiest of ways. Like, because standing up for yourself could be like, no, I don't want to go to Panera for lunch today. Ooh, she has an opinion, right? That's cool. Let's foster that. Standing up for yourself can be like, no, you can't copy my math homework. Standing up for herself can be, hey, I think I got question 3 right on my math test. Teacher, can you take another peek at it? Standing up for herself can be like, no, this girl is going to sit with us at lunch. This is oftentimes where many girls and grown-up girls are challenged in the way that we communicate. Because if we can't stand up for ourselves in these little small ways of like saying, I want this for lunch or I don't, or I want to go here or I don't, or I like this or I don't, how dare we expect them to know how to stand up for themselves in big ways? So if you're not seeing a demonstrated, if you're not seeing your girl consistently demonstrate the ability to use her voice, to have an opinion, and to share that opinion with others, that's where we have to start. Because teaching her how to navigate social media and how to set boundaries and all of that via technology, that's different. I mean, it's the same skill applied in a different setting, but if she can't do that in real life, we dare not expect her to do it online. So we don't have this generation of girls who are moving through the world with confidence and knowing that their voice and opinion matter, because half of them say they're afraid to speak their mind or disagree with others because they want to be liked. Okay? And so when we think about cultivating confidence in girls, a lot of it comes from helping them find their internal value that has nothing to do with how they look and everything to do with who they are. That's not the message that they're getting from the world. So we have to undo that, right? We have to reprioritize for them where their value comes from and how their voice and opinion matter profoundly. And when we think about this, how girls stand up for themselves, I want you to think about how you stand up for yourself. Because she's watching you, right? She's learning from you. And she's paying attention to the ways that you interact with others and the ways that you use your voice in appropriate ways. And so here's the example. It's very low risk. You leave here today, and you stop at Giant Eagle on the way home. And you have your little list, but on your list is lunch meat. Right? We've all done this before. Gone to get our lunch meat. And it's kind of busy because you actually all go at the same time. Right? So there's like 2 people in front of you, and you're like, it's not like take a number busy, but it's like a couple people. And so you're like, okay, it's their turn, and then it's their turn, and then it's my turn. Right? So you kind of, everyone's sort of, okay, you know. And so then the person turns around and says, hey, who's next? And you go, and you start to order. And then Susie Q, like, out of nowhere, comes with her little card and was like, hey, I'm ready. I'm going to take. And she cuts you. So this is your moment of decision-making for your life. Right? So put yourself there. There's lots of ways you can respond. There's passive. And we all kind of have our default. Passive is just, I let it roll. No big deal. Right? It's fine. I'm not in a hurry. Maybe you're not in a hurry. But maybe you are. But passive just means I let it roll. And like then she's the person who gets like everything like very thinly sliced, and like 1/8 of a pound and wants to try it all, right? And then you're just like, oh my God, right? So then like she finishes, and like you go, and then you leave, and who are you mad at? Yourself, right? You're probably a little mad at her, but you're mad at yourself, and you're like thinking of all the great things you should have said. Oh my God, next time that happens, I'm totally gonna say this, right? So that's like passive. It's like you're the doormat that just kind of gets walked on, right? And you get mad at yourself for it. And then there's passive aggressive, right? Which is what girls are really good at, which means I let it roll, but I make sure everybody else knows what just happened, right? So I don't say anything to her, Susie Q, but I make sure everyone else in line and in the entire store of Giant Eagle knows that this person just cut in front of me, right? And I'll be like, oh, did you just great? And she might turn around and say like, oh, did I cut? And were you next? And you'd be like, oh my goodness, no. There's no line here for you, right? We stir the trouble, but we don't directly address. That's often a default for girls. Then there's aggressive, right? And some of you might be like, well, that's me. I just go from 0 to 100, no problem, no stopping, and I yell, and I swear at this person, and then the manager comes and kicks me out of Giant Eagle, right? So there's like that. And then there's just like simply assertive, which is like, oh, actually, I was next. For some of us, that is like, would make us sweat, right? To actually say, excuse me, I was next in line. Not excuse me, but just like, hey, you know, I was next. That matters, right? That innocuous situation, the role modeling of that matters. Because girls are watching that. They're watching how we stand up for ourselves in appropriate or inappropriate ways. And they're learning to be passive, to be aggressive, to be assertive, by what they're observing. And wow, what a gift it is that their default would be appropriately and healthy assertiveness. Because how that particular skill, if you've got confidence and assertiveness connected, that's a sweet spot.
right? And somehow we have done this thing where we've decided that kindness and confidence can't coexist. That if you're too confident, you're mean or you're labeled, right? But you can be super kind and super confident at the same time. Those things can go together. And if we can get girls in that sweet spot, man, they could take on the world. Because they would believe that their voice and opinion matters, and then they would actually use it in right and appropriate and healthy ways. And then if they could do that in the small things, like at the deli at Giant Eagle, they could do it in the big things, when they have to navigate some challenge on social media, or when someone's asking to send them a picture. But if we haven't given them the chance to develop the skills, we can't expect them to apply them in other settings. I know I'm out of time. And I'm just going to...
One minute.
One minute. So hopefully there's not any really in-depth questions. But I'm happy to stay after and answer questions that you might have. I would encourage you, since we're all talking about social media, to follow us on social, because we'll be putting out another research report here in November that is on girls in diversity, that looks at kind of school girls go to, their age, their socioeconomic status, their ethnicity, who they live with, and how that contributes to some outcomes. And then we always put out like cool stuff that girls are doing, and other programs and workshops that we do here in Columbus and throughout the country. And then any of those reports and data that I referenced today, you can pull them all down on our site, as well as the videos that we showed earlier as well. And so, as I said, like, there isn't this quick fix. The relationship aspect of this matters insanely, and is the critical component to moving this forward in your work with girls. I know I didn't answer the question about age, and I think that to that point, I'm just going to end there, is like, you get to decide, right? There is actually no super concrete data that has come out with robust rigor that says this is the right age. There's some movements afoot, right? Wait till 8, and all of those things. But there's nothing that says at this particular age, the brain is developed to be able to handle this kind of interaction in the right way. And I think we have to think about the social media navigation as something that we're doing together. Not just like, okay, here you're old enough, here's your phone. That would be like, okay, here you're old enough, here's your car keys. Go for it. We would never do that. We would never say, here you're 16, here's your new car. I know you've never driven before, and you haven't been a driver's ed and never have taken a test, but here you go. So I think we have to think about it in that same way of walking alongside with them for each potential hazard that might come our way. And you get to decide if this is the age and what the parameters are. And what you might be finding is that your kids are ready to get in, or they're bugging you for technology, and you want to make sure you do it right, that you have the right limits and parameters. Or maybe you're so far gone, you want to reel that back in, right? It's like, hey, I gave them this technology and it is running our lives. How do I reel that back in? And I think there's two approaches. One is not come home from this and say, now we're going to set some rules. It's figure out the point at which the new rules can be negotiated, right? Is it the new phone? I want the new phone. Okay, well, there's some new rules associated with that. And I think that you're in charge of your own family and what works best for that. So I don't want you to feel undue pressure of everyone in their class has it and he only has a smartwatch, or everybody has this and she only has this, or she says she'll have no friends if she's not on social media, right? Those are the narratives that we hear. But I think ultimately you've got to decide what works best for you, and I don't think that if there were research that was fundamentally sound in that space, I would share it with you, but I don't know that there is. So I thank you for coming tonight and for spending time with us, and happy to answer questions as I know that as you're rolling out, so I'll hang out up here. I also have two of my colleagues here with me, Lauren and Crystal, and they'll be out there, and they work for Rox and are happy to answer questions too. They're super smart.
Thank you for all coming, we appreciate it. On the 23rd of October, we have our next program, it'll be here, so look for that as well too. Thanks.